that the faculty of reasoning and understanding objectively, especially with regard to abstract matters, is what is called intellect. However, the dictionary says it is the ability to understand and to think in an intelligent way, while some people will simply say it is a person's mental power. Whichever be the case, the intellectual ability of a man most of the times define how far or how slow the person will go. When someone has difficulty in reasoning and understanding properly, he or she could be said to have some sort of intellectual disability. Research says intellectual disability affects about 1% of the population, and about 85% have mild intellectual disability. It is also said, Kazim, I hope you won't crucify me for this. It is also said that males are most likely to have intellectual disability than females. Well, whether true or false, all I have said, we have somebody that is a guru. We have somebody that is intellectually sound on intellectual matters in the studio with us this morning. I'm not going to unveil her right now. Just stay tuned and watch our profile frame. You know, when I said someone that's intellectually sound to talk to us about intellect and intellectual disability, you will agree with me after seeing that intimidating profile there. In the studio, we have a woman for that matter. She is a board certified behavior analyst, that's BCBA. And for your information, she is the only person in Nigeria that is a Nigerian living in Nigeria with that certificate. So you have only one BCBA in Nigeria. We have all of them in diaspora. But this woman here in the studio, she's the only one. She is no other person than Eziafakaku. Yes, Nwokolo. I'd rehearsed and rehearsed only for me to come here and Eziafakaku. Did I get that?
Yes, you did.
Good morning.
Good morning,
good name is better than wealth.
That's people always limit it to money.
Money.
Like,
well, yeah, that's a good one. You're welcome. You're welcome.
Not money. It's
Yes.
more than money.
It's wealth, yes. And when we talk about wealth, it goes beyond money.
Exactly.
All right, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much.
This morning we're talking about intellectual disability. Honestly, when the producer sent the topic, I was like, really? Can we be intellectually disabled? Let's start from there. and what really is. You know, I've given all the definitions that I had to go and read and read and read, all the things I read. So, but you shed more light on it.
Okay.
What really is it? Can someone really be intellectually disabled?
Yes, yes, yes. Someone can be. A lot of people are actually intellectually disabled, but the issue is, what is intellectual disability? Maybe that's what will help us understand why people, or a lot of people, can be intellectually disabled. Okay, so because we have a diverse listenership, I will try not to go into all the big definitions. You've done a good job. So to a little bit of backstory is that in those days, maybe from early 20th century, 19th, and all of that, and up to some extent very recent as well, people always looked at intellectual disability as people that didn't have high IQ. So intellectual disability was always equated to IQ, your IQ being the intelligence quotient.
Yeah.
So, and a lot of the studies and things and information that we have come out from the West.
Okay.
So when you see somebody whose IQ, whose reasoning and cognitive ability and everything that makes up the IQ is below 70, they automatically say you have intellectual disability, just based on the IQ. But now it goes beyond the IQ. There are three components that make up intellectual disability. And we find that in what we call there's an ICD-11, it means International Classification of Diseases. So you have all manners of diseases in there. And then we have the American component that's called the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual, 5th edition, simply referred to as DSM-5. Okay, that's American based. But basically between these two manuals, the definition and classification of intellectual disability is domiciled, or is sitting under the domain of neurodevelopmental disorder. I mean, neuro having to do with the brain.
With the brain.
Okay, because again, everybody looks at the brain, and we know that the brain is responsible for a lot of feedback to the body. Right? So whether we see, it goes to the brain, it's processed, the message is sent for us to react. If we smell something, it goes to the brain, and it goes, so that's why everything comes from
that's where the interpretation
of things happen, right? Even your heart will send a message. So you understand why it's under that domain. Now, to then say you have, or an individual has intellectual disability, we're going to look at the age of onset. Whatever it is that you've observed this individual doing or not doing, in this case, when did they start? What were the signs? What were the symptoms and all of that? After we look at that, we then look at what we call the adaptive behaviors, adaptive skill. Now, for adaptive skills...
So before, let me hold your thought a bit. Before you go into all of this, to the layman out there, define intellectual disability. How can I see my brother, my child, and as a layman, I begin to sense that this person is seen to be intellectually disabled?
So that's where I'm going. So if I give you these three things, and I'll break them down so you can understand. Okay. So when you look at adaptive skills, we're looking at things of how do you interact with the environment, other people, your communication, your personal skills, your community skills, your speaking. If you're in an education system, how are you interacting and all of that? Do you understand? So even your things like taking your bath, muscle motion, you're walking, getting up for a baby, all those things. That's why we say adaptive behavior. How you interact with the total environment. If you see a tree, for instance, how are you relating with the tree? Okay. Then we have the IQ. as one of the components. So these three areas must be assessed and meet benchmarks before we can say the person has intellectual disability. So to break it down further, okay, if let's look at the component of IQ. You may have a child, a young child, who you've observed, the parents have observed that they are not performing very well in school. And so they are busy beating them, or the teacher, you know, in Nigeria we're quick, olodo, iti bolibo, whatever they call them in Hausa, you reference them, that this one doesn't know anything, como anything, you know, they can't, you know. But rather than go that route, look at it as a sign. What's happening with this child? So you immediately flag.
Okay.
The person has gotten to school, but before you get to school, that's where the adaptive one comes. You may see individuals, children who, for instance, their motor behavior. So you're talking of crawling, sitting up, they are walking, and all of that. They are not really doing them
the way it should be.
exactly. So what does it tell us? There's already something. There's a disconnect between the brain and the rest of the body.
Yeah.
So that is a flag. So it's not enough for the mother or the parents, even if you're in some remote village, you see the child is not really crawling, not really walking, standing properly, for us to say it's home trouble because we're individual, wherever we are. But you should be heading to your doctor. So your doctor, and I say that because we come in much later. The doctor, your pediatrician, or whoever your doctor is, should always be your first point of call. Okay? So they will then look at all of these things that's going on and take you for, they will do all sorts of tests. Now, if they are older individuals, okay, they may be engaging relatively well academically because they've gone through, we have beaten them, we have done many lesson teachers, we have done all sorts of things, providing extra support.
The crude ways.
And move them. So, again, what is cure? What is the definition of cure? In our context, in the Nigerian environment, cure means it disappears, it's no longer there.
That's right.
Right?
Yeah.
And life goes on. I have prayed and all is gone. There's a possibility. I don't know, I've not seen any, but if it does happen, fine. However, what can happen is that, you know, before I say that, let's back up. When you look at all the classification for intellectual disability, it's based on level of support. At the end of the day, when you've done a diagnosis, okay, you have the levels of support. You would have level 3 where you need extreme support for the rest of the person's life. And you have the level 2 where the support isn't for their entire life. And you have the ones that at level 1, they just need that minimal push. So that would be the way to respond to that. So if the person is on level 3 and requires extreme support, you will then agree with me, hopefully, that it doesn't mean that the person is cured or it can't be, or whatever, right? The cure. It just means that we have to be realistic and put things in place to help that individual live a functional life.
Okay.
But we can we say, so to speak, that is the person's reality? Exactly.
And we should not just not say that that person can't accomplish things.
Okay.
It is our duty as interventionists, professionals, and people in the field, and even parents especially,
I was going there,
to say that, okay, after this assessment, after this diagnosis, this is what they've told me. These are my child's strengths and weaknesses. How do we convert the weaknesses to strengths? It is not okay and wouldn't be okay for an individual not to be given the chance to thrive. Yes, you may need to support them, say if it's coupled with a motor disability, for instance. maybe due to the trauma or whatever it is that's happened, that they can't help themselves physically. Okay, so you then provide that.
Intervene. So
Support.
how do we, I was coming there also, how do we as family, as friends, give our support to people like this? How?
There's a lot to be done, but first and foremost is for families, the owners of the child, or the parents, to be accepting of the fact that my child has a challenge. That is the critical point. Not to deceive ourselves. When we are accepting of that fact and we own it with our full chest, we can then begin to have that discussion with you and I, okay? The so-called neurotypical people, everybody out there that is supposed to be normal, Abi, even though that normal.
I like that. Supposed to be normal.
Because it's relative.
It's relative.
It's relative.
So when we then pass this information to the next person, like you all are doing now, we enlighten, create more awareness, and hopefully have people who are more empathic, not compassionate. There's a difference between that sympathy and we don't need sympathy.
Okay.
And that is what people feel. Individuals with disability are not looking for sympathy. What they need is empathy, because with empathy comes understanding and the ability to respond to that individual's challenge.
Okay. Well, this certainly is will be an ongoing discussion, because time certainly would not certainly allow us to dwell much on it. But we will be, costing on gradually on this. But I want you to address this. Particularly, just like you have said, the first port of call for this will be our home, the family. The parents, being observant to begin to notice that some things are not
Something
right.
is amiss.
Yes. No. So in checking out this this very topic we're talking about today, I discovered that this disability can be mild, can be moderate, can be severe. You want to quickly take us through that?
So that's what I mean by the level 1, 2, 3 support.
Okay.
So if it's severe, you need like that extreme support. If it's moderate, we work with you. So if you look again, remember I mentioned adaptive skills, right?
Okay.
So your ability to take care of yourself. Unfortunately, a lot of people these days are actually enabling their children to be disabled.
Oh my.
If you see what I mean. So you have a sea of help and all sorts of things doing stuff for them.
Okay.
You see what I mean? So the adaptive skill isn't developing.
Okay.
So you see a 7-year-old or 8-year-old that can't wash their cup. So if I was doing an assessment, and I've seen it because in the study that we just did, you see 8-year-old, 9-year, 11-year-olds, 12, and they're looking at me as I'm asking them certain questions. They have no clue. They don't know how to wash clothes. These are skills, because as you're doing those things, what's happening? You're sending a message. That brain,
and you're also
there's that coordination.
Developing the
Okay, because we just have to let you go. But finally, before we let you go, I want to ask you, intellectual disability, can it lead to mental illness? That's talking about madness.
No, you see, that's when we talk of mental health in this part too. Everybody thinks of psychiatric hospital. No, having a psychiatric case is different from, but like I said, there could always be that coexistence of other psychiatric disorders with intellectual disability. But like I said, it's not my specialty. I just touch it so that we can refer the people to the right team members and focus on our focus.
Before, yes, we have to let you go. But she raised something that I thought you would address. That this thing is common among male or female. Is that true?
You want to know?
Is that true?
Like you said, don't crucify us. There are studies, all sorts of studies that always say that the men have more than the women. The ratio is all, even with autism, that there are more men than ladies.
Okay.
With this one too, more men than I don't know why.
Okay.
So,
All right, so
but
let's
that's
do
what
that.
That's the research. All right, we
Thank you.
just have to say a very big thank you to our guests at this junction. Honestly,
Thank
you will
you.
agree with me that this has been so educative
Indeed,
this morning.
indeed,
Honestly, so many things that we are not aware of that she has just brought to our knowledge. They say education is key, is power. Thank you so much. We've
My
been talking
pleasure.
to Eziafakaku. Eziafakaku Nwokolo. She is a board certified behavior analyst, and she is the only Nigerian with this certification living in Nigeria. I need to emphasize on that. And she is also the founder and CEO of Shades of Life Care Limited, a center that provides assessment, diagnosis, and intervention strategies to families with children that have behavioral challenges or autism spectrum disorder, as well as intellectual development
That's right.
disability. Thank you so much for being our guest this
My
morning.
pleasure.
Thank you so much once again for
you.
being here. And okay, well, very quickly, YK, in the course of our response, you did tell us one of the ways to manage this is to get the muzzle working, motor coordination.
All right.
A little late, but you're still welcome. It's still morning ride. And our second guest is right here seated with us. Yeah, but